of scholars and researchers. Well, in a nutshell, my work has been connected with exploring the paradigms of education, because education is a key asset to any country and to the world at large. Without education, we don't have development. We just cannot have development. So, because I'm working at the European Center for Peace and Development, as you rightly pointed out, which is a part of the United Nations University for Peace, I'm trying to find out what kind of education is best, is most conducive to the developing countries, to any country in the world which strives to reach a higher level of development than the present one. And this is important because development allows us to live better, to produce a better education in the future cycle, and to catch up slowly but surely, to catch up with the highly developed countries of today. We do not wish to be the periphery of the world any longer. We wish to close this gap between the highly developed countries and the developing countries. And there are various things I'm exploring in this, but the form that the education as such should take is crucial. Because, as you know, we all live now in the 21st century. And sometimes we are trying to close a gap, a development gap of even 200 years between our countries and the highly developed countries. So we have to be extra clever. We have to have the best method in order to achieve this. And, in our century, in our day and age, knowledge is the most important form of capital. So not buildings, not machines, not equipment, but knowledge. Knowledge is the best and most important resource that we as human beings have. In order to increase this knowledge, we have to invest in education. We have to make our education efficient, and hence the new paradigm. What does the new paradigm teach us? Well, it teaches us how to use ancient philosophy and modern technology. Okay, so if we now have AI, if we now have the Moodle platforms, which are, by the way, free of charge and ideal for the developing countries and the developing world as such, if we have able teachers, excellently educated teachers and professors, then we have to devise a system which will allow these brilliant teachers to spread this efficient education to the masses of workers and employees who are going to effect this development in their countries and at the level of the global community. So we took an ancient paradigm, which was actually known, as I pointed out in my presentation, since the 12th century in China. This was the work of a famous Neo-Confucian called Zhu Xi. But this was the paradigm of self-education or learner autonomy. And it was discovered in the West only in this century, in fact, in the 20th century, which is already last century. And I gave examples of two most prominent thinkers who expounded on it and made it possible and married it up with new technologies, which is what I'm researching. And that is a Frenchman and an Englishman. But the most prominent among the two is Professor David Little of Trinity College, Dublin, who said that all learning is actually autonomous learning, and that if a person wants to learn, there is no one who is going to stop him or her. They have to steal knowledge. They have to fight for this knowledge, and they have to make it their own. This is the process of cognition, which is best effected in the learner autonomy paradigm. And now, what happens when you marry this up with the new technologies? You get the new technologies enabling the dissemination of this knowledge to the large student audiences. And that makes it usable and effective for developing countries. Of course, it is also effective in the highly developed countries, but there, at their best, most elite universities, it has always been present. You had tutorials. You first of all had small groups. You were teaching small classes. And you were then having individual tutorials once a week in each subject with your professor. And that was the same effect as the learner autonomy, because this professor would test your cognition and make it happen if it had not happened by reading the literature. But this is not something we can do with classes of up to 200 that we are normally teaching in poorer countries. The country where European Center for Peace and Development is situated is Serbia. It's a poor country, and it's a developing country, which is situated in the heart of Europe. But it is on its path to development. We are doing our best to develop this country, Serbia, and to develop the whole of the world, because we believe that we all have the same needs, and those needs are primarily for knowledge. So this is what I'm doing, and I think it's very crucial to resolve this, to make this one grade up into a new paradigm. Because when you cannot resolve your problems in the existing world, in the existing paradigm, you have to go into a new paradigm. You have to make a takeoff into a new world and find the solutions there. So this is autonomous learning coupled with AI and with new technologies. And this is a promise for our better future as a humanity. Challenges were enormous because the research and the teaching community at universities all over the world, irrespective of where they are located, is characterized by conservatism. Professors are very, very conservative, even if they are not aware of it. So the first person who unmasked this fact was Thomas Kuhn in the 70s. He wrote a lovely little book called The History of Scientific Revolutions. And sometimes it is quite comic, but professors are so conservative that he said there is no shift into a new paradigm until the current generation of professors retires or dies. So it was very difficult to overcome this conservatism because people wanted to teach in small classes, in the classrooms, and to be able to read the papers that their students write, not realizing how expensive this methodology was and how far out of the reach of most universities in developing countries it stands. And it was until COVID. When COVID happened, then most countries, even Oxford and Cambridge, everybody started teaching online because that was the only way to preserve life, to preserve the professors and the students. And then they started realizing, nilly-willy, that teaching online and with new technologies is possible and could be very desirable. But this reduced this conservatism a little bit, but I had to fight very hard to remain in the teaching online orbit and using the new technologies to disseminate the knowledge to the large masses of students, even after COVID officially stopped. It is not easy, but we must persevere. If we believe firmly in what we are doing and how we are doing it and why we are doing it, then we have to stand very still and very pertinent on our standpoint, because this is for the good of all students at all ages, all over the globe. Not even the most developed countries are so rich any longer. Everybody needs to save and to have bigger effects, because everybody else will be overtaking them in development. So we cannot stand still. We cannot allow to be conservative in our approach to teaching methodologies. We have to explore the possibilities of new technologies day by day, because, as you know, technologies are rapidly changing and rapidly advancing. So we have to keep up with our philosophy of teaching and to check our results. So that was, well, that is what keeps me going, because this terrible conservatism and rejection of logic is omnipresent. Nobody wants anything to change. Everybody wants the world of teaching to remain just the same as when they were studying 50 years ago. And you understand that that is not possible without heavy losses, of course. The opportunity cost of conservatism in this respect is very high. Challenges were enormous because the research and the teaching community at universities all over the world, irrespective of where they are located, is characterized by well, my motivation was basically the need to help humanity, the large part of human race, to develop, because in my student days, which was in the 70s, there was a wide gap between the highly developed countries and the so-called developing countries. But unfortunately, after the 70s gap, this gap became larger and larger, deeper and deeper. The gap between the developed and the underdeveloped or developing countries has only widened and deepened in the meantime, in these decades. So I decided, after finishing my PhD, which was in 1984, I decided that I have to contribute to this fight to reduce this gap, to close this gap, to help the world to develop, especially the developing world. We had a very powerful drive. The European Center for Peace and Development had a very powerful drive towards the South-South cooperation. And I still believe that even today, the South-South cooperation, meaning using our own resources as developing countries, combining them and collaborating between ourselves, we can do a lot for ourselves. We can do a lot to close this gap. But of course, in each developing country, we have a certain number of highly educated people who were schooled and trained at the world's top universities and who come back to their homes with superior knowledge of the moment. So if we strive to find the good pedagogies, this new paradigm of education, we can spread what we learned at the highly developed countries' universities to our own universities and to our own labor force, to our own population. And this was my motivation, and it has been all my life. I came back to Serbia at the age of 23 after graduating and finishing my master at the University of Cambridge in England. And I was really full of desire to spread this knowledge to everyone that wished to study in my own country. And this is what keeps me going even today. I can see that our fight for development is equal to our fight for peace. And in turn, peace enables development, because what we need in developing countries is, first of all, peace and social peace and a harmonious developing society within our own countries and in the cooperation with the rest of the world. And for that, we need to increase our educated workers, our educated people. And the population needs to go one step higher each year and has to keep up the pace with the developing countries, which is not easy, which is a big requirement, but it pays off. It pays off because now look what happened in China. Look at their development pace. Look at the development pace in many developing countries. The fastest growing economy in Europe is Malta. Malta is a small island that relies heavily on tourism, but it is the fastest growing country in this year in Europe. And do you know who is number 2 compared to the growth rate results? It's Serbia. Believe it or not, it's Serbia. You may say that Malta is not a developing country, but we could argue on that. But Serbia is definitely a developing country, but it is growing very fast. So we have to, and this is what keeps me persevering on this path. We have to know, we have to keep this knowledge, we have to increase this knowledge all the time, and we have to share it among our populations. And that will bring the development gap close one day, I hope soon, and that will make us all happier and live better. I'm so pleased to say what I think that can encourage them. Please be brave. Please understand that your ideas today are the best ones. If you're not sure, please consult with us, senior researchers, because we only have experience and we only look at the world diachronically. In that case, we can be of help to you. So consult your professors, consult your older colleagues, consult among yourselves as young researchers, but be brave. Be sure that what you feel down here in your soul and in your mind about the situation, about the existing paradigm, is a critique of this paradigm, and stick to it. Don't be discouraged. Don't be discouraged faced with conservatism of some of the older colleagues. Know that you're right. Why I'm saying that you young people are right? Because you belong to this day and age. You belong to this generation. You understand technology much better than anyone else, and you can keep up with its fast developing phase and pace. So your vision of the world and of the needs of your countries is the real one. That's the correct one. So your choice of the development paradigm or the research paradigm in your field will be excellent, but test it in conversation with professors, with your older colleagues. Test it among yourselves in your peer consultations, and don't ever be shy to present your views at the Eurasia or other world conferences, because we can give you a feedback. You see, we can tell you what we think, and then in this clash of views, a friendly clash of views, we can progress. You can increase your capacity for research results, but never give up. It's not easy. It's not instant. There are no instant solutions, but with hard work and with good feeling and with a good sense of direction, tested in conversation with your peers and your professors and your seniors, you will find the joy, the absolute joy of research and the absolute joy of development, because with research, the development of a field, of a discipline is possible. And that will contribute to the development of your countries and of the humanity of the world as a whole. That's That's my advice. So just be brave and be persevering. It was an excellent conference. I attended some of your conferences in the past, actually, as well. But I had some accidents. I broke my left shoulder, right arm, left ankle was injured, and the worst of all, I fell and I broke my hip, and I had an operation. So I was absent from public life for about 2 years. Coming back to attend this conference was a great joy to me. It was an intellectual food. It was something that gave me back the energy to keep researching and to share views with other intellectuals, with other researchers. Um, the feedback or the takeaway from the conference was that it is all happening. AI is here. We just have to learn how to use it. Um, there are many questions posed nowadays. Is AI dangerous? Well, um, it is not actually the AI itself which is dangerous. It's the people who create, who program the AI that have to be conscientious and that have to have humanism as their guiding force. So my takeaway from the conference was very, very inspirational. I found it a great driver to our development, personal as researchers. And I'm looking forward to the next one because I just love to be in touch with other colleagues who do research and who strive for the good of humanity.